who's been a tireless campaigner for workers at Manchester Airport. Madam Deputy Speaker, Manchester Airport is a core part of Greater Manchester's economy. It employs 25,000 people directly on site and 76,000 indirectly, and generates £4.5 billion for the local economy. It has links to 210 different destinations, more than any other UK airport, and is an international gateway for trade and travel, acting as a major draw for investment and development in Greater Manchester, giving our region a huge competitive advantage. For example, in the past 2 years, its direct route to China helped to grow export values in the north by 41%, also bringing with it £250 million to the visitor economy. There's a whole supply chain that relies on a successful Manchester airport. Catering companies such as Newrest and hotel chains, including Hilton, have both been impacted by the lack of footfall during the lockdown and are being forced to make cuts. Furthermore, an independent Transport Commission report revealed that 55% of the workforce in the area surrounding Manchester Airport is employed by aviation businesses. As a result, Manchester Airport is central to everything we do in the North West and will be a major catalyst for kick-starting the regional economy as we emerge from the first phase of the coronavirus crisis. The fallout from COVID-19 has therefore been catastrophic, with passenger levels and revenue dropping to historic lows, between 1% and 4% of the levels seen within the same period last year. Thousands of the workers now face redundancy if the government does not intervene to save the airport, its airlines and the businesses that rely on it as a key hub. More than 1,500 redundancies have been proposed to date, well over half of which are for Swissport. Widespread losses have already been reported for a number of airlines, including Virgin, Ryanair, Jet2, TUI, and just this week, EasyJet, with more to follow in the coming weeks. Manchester Airport Group, which also operates London Stansted and East Midlands Airport, now faces a difficult restructuring programme, with 25% of its leadership and management positions being cut, and the remaining 75% being subject to restructuring, all of which will take place before the end of the furlough period, when further redundancies are almost certain to follow. While the furlough scheme has been of some help, the money is little more than a drop in the ocean, accounting for just 5% of the airport's fixed costs. This situation will not simply end with resumption in air travel. Even with an increased number of air bridges and an end to quarantine, the aviation industry has warned that there may not be a return to anything like normality until the second half of 2021. And even then, the numbers are only expected to be around 90% of the pre-crisis level. The government must therefore consider a sectoral support package that will ensure that the industry has the backing and confidence it needs to recover as quickly as possible and to mitigate job losses and protect skilled jobs. I will give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you for giving way in this really important debate that you've brought this evening. Would you agree with me that while airports in our regions provide many direct jobs, as you've outlined, they also have an important role to play with... Sorry.
The Honourable Lady, mind just saying that again. Instead of saying, would you agree with me, could she please just say, would he agree with me? No, everyone can make a mistake now and then. It's not terrible, but it's just time that we manage to grasp this and get it right. And I'd be grateful if she would set an example, please.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate, as a newer member, I am practising the ways, and I will get it right. Thank you to my honourable friend for giving way, and would he agree with me that regional airports have an important role to play, not only for all the direct jobs that they provide in our areas, but for the wider jobs and services that they can support, such as in London Luton Airport, which is in my constituency, which is the 5th largest airport in the UK. I would also have to add that. But it provides £20 million a year direct dividend to Luton Council, which provides jobs and services, as well as £10 million a year direct to the voluntary and community charitable organisations. And therefore, would he agree with me? That's a very important role as well.
Well done. Absolutely. I would agree. I think in the past few years, especially in the last decade, local authorities, councils have faced a lot of cuts with the austerity regime, and including my own local council of Stockport, Greater Manchester Combined Authority, they depend on income generated by the airport. So I do take your point, and thank you for raising it. Moving on, if the government doesn't step in, the businesses will continue to collapse and tens of thousands of workers will lose their jobs. In the North West, it is crucial that that we do not see a repeat of what happened to Thomas Cook last year, which had a huge impact on the 3,000 employees who lived and worked across Greater Manchester, including 5 branches across the borough of Stockport, including Merseyway in my own constituency, as well as the 900 cabin crew who operated out of the airport. Madam Deputy Speaker, in his budget on the 17th of March, the Chancellor of the Exchequer promised a financial support package for the aviation sector. That was almost 4 months ago, and we are still waiting. It is completely unacceptable, given how precarious the current situation is for the industry, that we're still waiting. The government needs to urgently consider sector-specific furlough support, such as an extension to the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme that is currently scheduled to end on the 31st of October. Such an extension should also come with a warning that no company is allowed to accept public funds from the scheme and use it to cover the cost of making staff redundant. The government must also consider prioritising loans or taking stake in companies and ensure that when that happens, those businesses who agree to such support should be prohibited from paying dividends, undertaking share buyback or capital contributions, and cap executive pay until 12 months after the loan is fully repaid. Business rates make up a significant proportion of our airport's fixed cost at a time when the revenue is close to zero. In recognition of this, business rate relief has already been provided to airports in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the UK government should correct this anomaly for airports in England too, and also support local authorities so they do not face further financial strain. Temporary measures should also be considered, such as a reduction to air passenger duty, which makes up a significant proportion of tickets and limits the profits that airlines can make. In addition, support is needed for temporary funding of Civil Aviation Authority. Many businesses, Madam Deputy Speaker, have rightly been praised for the efforts they have made during the crisis to support and retain their workers, utilising government loans where needed to retain staff on full pay or opting for furlough staff rather than laying them off. And those that have gone down the route of government support have done so in good faith and in the hope that this will be no more than a short-term measure. The flip side is companies that take advantage of the system, using taxpayers' money to prioritise the protection of shareholder dividends ahead of protection of their own workers. One such company is British Airways, whose chief executive, Willie Walsh, was hauled before the Transport Select Committee in May, which branded Mr Walsh's company a national disgrace. Despite having a parent company, IAG, with total assets of £10.7 billion and profits last year alone of £2.6 billion, at the very first opportunity, Mr Walsh furloughed 22,626 of his employees. In doing so, he claimed the measure was to protect jobs and ensure that BA comes out on the other side of this crisis in the best possible shape. What is clear now, just weeks later, is that the protection of jobs was never his priority, beyond those of BA's top executives, and despite IAG being in position to retain its entire workforce on full pay for more than a year, even without government support, Mr Walsh announced that all 42,000 of British Airways' workforce would be made redundant, with 30,000 fired and rehired on inferior contracts, with worse pay, terms and conditions. That's 12,000 people redundant, while failure by those employees to sign the paperwork, which contains a clause allowing the company to temporarily lay off workers, will result in instant dismissal. As part of its plans, British Airways Contact Centre in Didsbury, Manchester is set to be affected, with its 350 workers being faced with redundancies. This is completely unacceptable, and I would urge the Minister to look at measures for holding British Airways to account, including reviewing the lucrative slot allocations that they are given as a legacy carrier, which, in the case of London Heathrow, in the Right Honourable Member for Hayes and Harlington's constituency, amounts to more than 50% of all spaces at the airport. The question must be, if they are targeting their legacy staff, many of which have spent decades of loyal service building BA's brand, why should they be rewarded with legacy slots? They can't pick and choose which legacies they keep. It is also incredibly important that our efforts to tackle climate change are not lost as we revive and rebuild our aviation sector. Indeed, this can and should be an opportunity to explore new technologies further and green the economy with well-paid unionised jobs. That means inserting clauses into financial support the government provides for businesses to provide a clear programme of transitioning to more efficient and environmentally friendly operations, including cleaner fuel options. There should also be consideration for publicly financing smaller airports and air traffic control, as well as specific routes within the UK aviation network to retain much-needed connectivity. There are many examples around the world of governments backing the aviation sector, such as the US injecting $45 billion into the sector. Another good example closer to home is France, where Emmanuel Macron's government has unveiled a series of historic rescue packages, including one of almost £7 billion for Air France, which included £4 billion in bank loans guaranteed by the state and £3 billion in loans direct from the government, all of which has helped to safeguard Air France's 84,000 employees. As part of the rescue package, France's finance minister was clear that airline bosses need to bring forward a plan for reducing carbon dioxide emissions and transforming its fleet to be less polluting. Similar steps would be very welcome in Britain. Ultimately, as lockdown measures are eased, people's health remains a priority ahead of profits. That means that companies must be compelled to take all possible steps to ensure that appropriate action is taken, such as proper PPE for all staff and the enforcing of government's social distancing guidelines. That is why last month, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham launched the Safely Reopening Greater Manchester campaign, which is an initiative to ensure the region's economy can reopen safely from the COVID-19 lockdown. Greater Manchester Combined Authority, led by Mayor Burnham, is also looking at initiatives such as regional brokering scheme to match those people who are at risk of being made redundant when the furlough scheme ends to parts of the economy where there are opportunities, as well as exploring initiatives such as the Future Jobs Fund. In closing, it is time for the government to act. All 10 local authorities in Greater Manchester have already intervened to support Manchester Airport Group, providing a combined package of more than £250 million to protect long-term investments and safeguard tens of thousands of jobs that rely on the airport as a major engine of the local economy. I urge the Minister to consider all of the measures I've set out in this speech and ensure that our aviation sector can build back better and be the economic catalyst that our country desperately needs if it is to emerge stronger from this crisis. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Andy Carter.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you very much for calling me in this important debate, and can I thank the Honourable Member for Stockport for securing this debate as well. And although I don't live in the constituency where Manchester Airport is based, I, like many other Cheshire residents, live on the flight path. In fact, during normal times, I can sit at my kitchen table and I can count the planes out in the morning and I can count them back in the afternoon. In fact, I've developed a bit of an unhealthy obsession. I open the app just to find out where those planes are going to and wish on many occasions that I was going with them. One thing that's really struck me over the last few weeks of the crisis is just how passionate people are about having a flagship northern airport on their doorsteps. And I don't just mean the plane spotters that you see queuing to get into the runway aviation park. People really do care about having somewhere that they can reach out to the world from on their doorstep. Manchester's role as a northern hub airport, its position as the most used airport in the north, and the fact that it's the only airport outside of London that's got 2 full-length runways, means it really does have a critical role for our northern economy. And we take real pride in that facility. It links us to 210 different destinations, more than any other UK gateway, and it's got direct links to 35 of our top 50 export markets. It really is fundamental to that northern powerhouse economy. No longer do we have to rely on the south to export and trade. And as somebody who worked with businesses across Europe and in Asia before coming to this place, there is nothing more frustrating than living next to Manchester Airport and knowing that you have to drive to Stansted or Heathrow to get a flight just to jump across the channel. Today, flights passing over my house have gone from hundreds to 4 or 5 a day. And most of those are domestic. And that's at the heart of the issue for Manchester Airport and the wider economy. Warrington's close proximity means that it's the place where families have moved to and have chosen to live, and the risk to our local economy and the recovery is significant because of that massive drop in passenger levels. It's staff who work airside, it's crews, it's pilots, it's air traffic controllers, engineers, border force guards, all of them live in Warrington South, as well as other constituents in the northwest of England. The supply chains which feed and fuel the sector are part of our local economy. And whilst this debate isn't about British Airways, I share the members' views from Stockport with regard to the way that British Airways have handled many of the negotiations with their staff at an incredibly difficult time. Madam Speaker, restarting the aviation sector is a vital part of the UK's economic recovery for Warrington, for the Northern Powerhouse and for the UK. And I very much look forward to hearing from my right honourable friend, the member for Welland and Hatfield, when he announces plans to allow flights to resume shortly. Indeed, I was really pleased to hear the Transport Secretary this morning confirming that he's looking at common health protocols to keep passengers safe. And the Department of Transport deserves credit, in particular the Minister who's here, deserves credit for the incredible efforts that they've taken to ensure that we can see a recovery in this sector. At the same time, during this health crisis, it really is important, though, that we ensure that those high-risk countries where infection rates are high are regarded as high risk, and that people are coming into this country from those locations self-isolate to make sure that we do not spread the disease further. This is an industry that contributes billions to our local economy. It supports thousands of jobs, and it's growing. The centrepiece of the £1 billion Manchester Airport transformation programme, the extension of Transport 2, has been delayed, put on hold, because of what's happened over the last 3 months. It's an oven-ready project. It's been privately funded. World-class infrastructure that relies on a rapid and strong economy to enable it to deliver the economic benefits to the north and to level up. And I'm sure none of us in this House doubt that the economic situation facing the industry is anything less than critical, with passenger levels dropping to historic lows. So I conclude by saying restarting the aviation sector is a vital part of the UK's economic recovery. Aviation, the facilities that it supports, and the travel industry are crucial to the economic growth of the region, to the north, to the Northern Powerhouse and to Warrington, and I'm urging the Government to take full steps to ensure that we can grow our sector as sufficiently as possible.
Minister Kelly Tolhurst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Stockport on securing this debate about Manchester Airport and the local economy. I also would like to thank my honourable friend from Warrington South for his contribution. And also I would like to mention the Honourable Member from Wythenshawe and Sale East, as I know he has a keen interest in Manchester Airport and is unable to speak today. But I have listened carefully to the points that he has made, and I will endeavour to address as many as I am able. As members across the House will be well aware, these are incredibly challenging times for the aviation sector, and COVID-19 has presented unprecedented difficulties for the industry. But I want to start by ensuring that we don't forget that aviation and aerospace industry is a British success story. Before the impact of COVID-19, the UK aviation sector contributed at least £22 billion to the UK economy each year and directly supported around 230,000 jobs spread across the UK. Around 12% of those jobs are in the North West, so I am very mindful of the impact which COVID-19 is having on communities across the region. We know aviation is one of the sectors worst affected by COVID-19, and areas such as Manchester, with its large airport and supply chain, are particularly affected. Having held regular discussions with the whole of the sector since the pandemic began, I met again with senior management from Manchester Airport earlier this week, and I want to thank them for their constructive engagement throughout this period as we continue to work collaboratively with the sector to ensure its recovery. And I am very encouraged, as I am sure the Honourable Member for Stockport was, to hear that this week Manchester Airport's plans to reopen Terminal 2 from July 15. That follows the opening of Terminal 3 this week. I know we have still a long way to go, but this shows the beginnings of the sector's recovery as flights once again take to the skies. The restart comes on the back of an unprecedented package of measures which the Chancellor put in place to protect the economy and jobs, and the Honourable Member has spoken about the support for the particular sector. And I'm afraid this is where we slightly disagree, because the support that was put in was unprecedented. It has absolutely enabled airlines, airports, ground handlers to benefit from significant amounts of taxpayer support during the most critical time. But also it didn't end there. The Chancellor and the Secretary of State were incredibly clear that any business needing further support, having exhausted all the economic measures that were put in place, had that ability to talk to us to look for further support. And I would say that any business that is in that situation and has utilised all that support, we are ready and stand ready to speak to those organisations. Yes, I will.
I'm very grateful for my own friend for giving way, and I apologise to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for arriving late to the adjournment debate. But can I congratulate my honourable gentleman for Stockport? And while she's speaking on that, could she tell us perhaps if there have been any approaches already from the likes of Manchester Airport to take her up on that offer that she appears to be making?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution. Obviously, commercial discussions are really not for discussion within the chamber, but I would like to just reassure my honourable friend that I am in regular communication with all of the airports within the United Kingdom, and our officials within the department are in weekly contact with them. But these measures included the Bank of England's COVID corporate financing facility, which provides funding to businesses to pay wages and suppliers. It also includes the Coronis Job Retention Scheme, which helps firms to continue to keep people in employment by allowing businesses to put workers on temporary leave, and also the Business Interruption Loan Scheme. All of these measures have been designed to ensure that companies of any size receive the help they need to get through this difficult time, including airports, airlines and the wider supply chain. Beyond this package, many firms are getting support from established market mechanisms such as existing shareholders, and I know the honourable gentleman mentioned the support that had been provided by the local authorities, bank lending and commercial finance. We have been looking at other flexibilities to give the sector as well. The Civil Aviation Authority is working with airlines, airports and ground handlers to provide flexibility within the regulatory framework to help them manage the impacts of COVID. And we also welcome the response by the European Commission, who relaxed the 80-20 rule on slots, and we are continuing to engage with organisations across the sector on that particular issue. Nevertheless, I would not want to underestimate the challenges to the sector and to the airports such as Manchester, because despite the measures that we have put in place to protect the economy, there remain serious challenges for the aviation sector. I want to particularly turn to the announcements and the honourable gentleman's comments in relation to the redundancies, and redundancies from a number of companies, as the honourable gentleman has outlined, and these are very distressing announcements for employees and their families. While they are commercial decisions, they are decisions which I profoundly regret as the aviation minister. Redundancies are not something that should be considered lightly, and I would therefore say to the House that if organisations find themselves having to consider these measures, then I hope they will do so sensitively. I hope they will take into account the dedication, the professionalism that their employees have shown, and I hope they will act within and, where possible, beyond the requirements and the spirit of all relevant legislation. The honourable member and my honourable friend mentioned British Airways in particular, and I spoke directly to BA and the IAG's Chief Executive, Willie Walsh, to discuss the organisation's plans and its engagement with staff and union representations. We have offered, and I have offered, to support these engagement efforts where possible and where it is appropriate to do so. I am also in regular communication with the unions who are particularly affected by those redundancies. I encourage BA and the unions to engage constructively with each other, striving to provide the employees with as much certainty as possible during this challenging time. And now I would like to turn to the sector's restart, and particularly the next stage of our plan to help the sector recover. Because we need aviation. Aviation is vital to our future as a global trading nation and plays a critical role in local economies, whether in Manchester or elsewhere. We have established the Restart and Recovery team with an expert steering group to ensure a truly collaborative approach between government and industry. Last month, we published the aviation health guidance for operators, as well as the air safer travel guidance for passengers. This forms a vital first pillar as we seek to ensure that our aviation sector returns to its full strength as possible.
Will the Minister give way?
I will give way.
Will the Minister agree with me that she mentioned the Manchester economy, that Manchester Airport is not just the Manchester economy, it is the North West economy, in particular Warrington and Cheshire and across to Merseyside. The size of Manchester Airport is a much, much bigger operation than just the Manchester economy.
My honourable friend is correct. As with all major infrastructure such as airports, always had a wider impact than the activity that they directly partake in. And of course, absolutely, the success of Manchester Airport has been a big contributor to the wider local economy and the supply chain. And that is something that we're very mindful of within DFT and working with our colleagues across government to make sure we understand the full impact of the difficulties within the aviation sector. But I would like to point out that particularly in relation to the health guidance, and I would like to highlight that MAG and Manchester Airport were one of the leading members of the expert steering group in working with us in order to devise that health and passenger guidance, and I thank them very much for that. We have built on progress on Monday when we announced that government will shortly begin to ease health measures at UK borders, allowing passengers to be exempt from self-isolation requirements in certain circumstances on arrival in the UK. The Joint Biosecurity Centre, in close consultation with Public Health and the Chief Medical Officer, has developed a categorisation of countries and territories which present a lower risk, so that passengers entering the UK from those places will not require 14 days of self-isolation. This has been informed by factors including the level of COVID within a country, the number of new cases and the expected trajectory in the coming weeks. Further details, including a full list of those countries from which arriving passengers will be exempt from self-isolation, will be announced shortly. Throughout this process, public safety has been at the heart of our decision-making. We have worked closely with health and policy experts from across government to ensure steps that we are taking are gradual and minimise the risk of new COVID-19 cases while helping to open up our travel and tourism sectors. We want to see the aviation sector return to normal operations as soon as possible. However, even with this week's announcements, there is a great deal of uncertainty around how long this will take, given the truly international nature of the sector. We want to ensure a safe customer journey in the UK and abroad. We also want aviation to be sustainable and environmentally friendly as possible. The aviation sector must be a green one that creates high-quality, high-skilled jobs. I will, yeah.
I thank the Minister for giving way on that point. Will the Minister commit to looking at the proposals put forward by the French government when it comes to support for the sector and the conditions they've put when it comes to using cleaner fuel, reducing emissions and supporting the wider economy with that sectoral package?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for the question, and as I was coming to, actually, he would have heard and maybe seen that the Secretary of State announced last week the formulation of the Jet Zero Council, which has been absolutely supported by the industry, and it will be a council which will bring together government and aviation and environmental groups to make to make net zero emissions flights possible. And speaking with Manchester Airport this week and others across the industry, there is a real determination from the sector to make this a real vital pillar of the recovery. So actually we have an industry that want to deliver on that agenda, and we are working with them support with or without that bespoke support. But it is absolutely important that we make sure that we understand the profound impact that COVID-19 will have also on the way people change their, see their lives change and their work and travel. And it is clearly sensible that our plans to reduce emissions understand and absolutely take that into account. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to thank the honourable member for securing this debate. Manchester Airport is the only British airport, other than Heathrow, to operate 2 full-length parallel runways. It handled its first scheduled flight in 1938, a KLM Douglas DC-2 to Amsterdam, and in 2010 it became the first airport of its size to have daily A380 service elsewhere in the world. I want to thank the honourable gentleman again for bringing this debate, because it has given me an opportunity as the Aviation Minister to highlight some of the concerns. And I am very mindful and absolutely take on board the concerns that he's raised around slots and the green recovery, and also the particular strain that local authorities may feel when they have been supporting those airports. But as I have highlighted to him, as the Department of Transport, we are committed to staying close to our airports and working with them in the best way possible to achieve that. I think we are all aware of the scale of the challenge facing the aviation sector, and not just the aviation sector, the economy, as a result of COVID. The efforts we are making in partnership with the sector are to ensure that UK aviation can recover, and the airports such as Manchester and the communities it serves can recover and prosper in the future, just as they have in the past. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.
The proceeding has ended.